10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Amanda with DevExpress, and I am here with Arig. Arig, how are you
Hi,
doing?
nice to join you again.
For our
Yeah, hopefully you
Tuesday
can. I'm coming
chats.
in loud and clear. I know that we've had a few audio hiccups in the past, but I think we've resolved all those.
I I hope so. I'm like,
Yeah, that was my
fingers
vote of
crossed.
confidence. I think we've resolved all
I think we
those.
have.
Yeah,
All
but
right. Well, what are you talking about today,
actually,
Arig?
it's a continuation, kind of. I think of what we started. I think it's probably been more than a month now. We've been talking about this one example where we basically put up we have an account on GitHub. It's not a regular DevExpress account. It's actually called DevExpress Examples. There's lots of great examples here. You probably have seen them in the support center if you're a customer of ours, but there's one in particular we've been talking about. We've been adapting to our own needs. And it's basically taking our Office File API and calling it from MAUI. And MAUI is how you build cross platform UI for mobile, so for Android and for iOS. So you're going to be signing PDFs using your Office File API to actually save the PDF, and then you can do whatever you want at that point. So that's what we're really doing at this point. We're using MAUI to communicate with a web service, and we're uploading PDFs and signing them. So that's what we've been doing, and there's many working pieces to that. So it's
Okay.
not quite as straightforward as I said it's going to be, but yeah, I think we've made good progress. So let me kind of, I think, start off by reminding us kind of where we started off from, which is this example. So if you navigate to Maui Sign PDF Files, which is the name of this project, and I think we'll link this in the description so you can take a look at this yourself. But it's actually three different projects here. The third project is actually the more complicated of the three, where you can just actually sign yourself. So you're signing, and then that signature actually gets applied onto a bitmap preview of the page, and we're using our document processor to actually render that preview. The By the way, I should also mention that that signature that you're seeing, that signature effect, is actually because of something called the Maui Community Toolkit project, which provided us with a drawing view. So we're using the drawing view to do this. So just to reiterate kind of where that's at, and I've already gone ahead and cloned the project, so I have it open here in my terminal in this pane. But if I open this particular project in Visual Studio, I am I got hopefully opened up on the next screen, but I'll move it over as soon as we get it loaded. So here we go. There we go. Uh, so let me point here to, I believe this is the, and while we're at it, let me also go ahead and open this folder so we can just navigate here directly to where. So if you, again, if you clone that project, you navigate to the third of that series, you'll see that there is some source code you can run. This is a DevExpress example. So this is not something that we wrote, but this is actually kind of the core or the basis of the functionality we were looking to implement. So this is kind of a basic MVM style project in Maui. There's basically one main view, and it's using the that drawing view I was talking about. And I'll launch the emulator so it's loading while we're talking. But it's using the drawing view here. So this is that Maui Toolkit drawing view, and we are basically enabling the ability for us to draw any signature of any complexity. So we're allowing multi-line mode. We also have an attached behavior here, and that's kind of, I think, the one sort of complication uh, that we basically added this drawing view MVVM behavior, and we're attaching it to our drawing view. Um, but this is the example that kind of you start off with if you're looking at this particular repository. And I'll go ahead and run this right now. Well, I'll wait a little bit longer for Android to heat up. But I want to kind of reiterate kind of where the starting point was because I think it's a fairly complicated endpoint if you don't really know where we're coming from. There's probably a few other things worth noticing here. We are using this container to actually display the preview, and then we're using the document processor as well. So I got a handy, nice extension I've installed since our last time we were talking about this. This handy extension lets me do some really efficient find and search in my projects. I'm a big fan of this particular extension. Actually, it's called Fast Find, and the document processor is our document processor. So if you go here into our view model, you see it's here, this document processor, and this is actually allowing us to actually handle the render. And now that I've actually gotten Android loaded, I can show you kind of what the behavior is of this project. Uh, it says it's having some package error. I think I have to wait for Android to totally get ready. If not, I need to do a .NET force restore. Uh, no need to worry. I think that what I can do here, and if this version doesn't want to load, it's fine. I can actually go ahead and let's do a .NET restore. So this is something also you may need to do from time to time if you're running with a particular version of Visual Studio and a particular version of MAUI. You may need to actually force restore. What is the problem? It looks like it's not super happy with downgrading my MAUI reference. It's not a problem. In any case, I think that's kind of obvious. What we're looking to do, I kind of explained the details involved with this project. What is actually pretty interesting is where we've taken this. So, kind of bear in mind with me that this was the starting point. You can watch the other screencasts to see what we've done with this starting point. But eventually, it led to where we are right now with the project. That is, that I've kind of taken the MAUI piece and I've built it out so that it's starting from that particular project. But I've also built a front end in Blazor Server, so it could also communicate with a controller endpoint to upload new PDF files. Because generally speaking, you're not going to be selecting files from your mobile device to view. You're going to be selecting files in maybe a browser environment and then loading those additional files. So let me go ahead and clone this particular, yeah, let me maybe call this live streamed or else streamed 4. I'll go into this version of the project that you guys can also follow along with at home. And hopefully it was my SSH key that I got right. And we're cloning the project. Um, it's kind of heavy, but let's go live stream 4. And you'll notice that, again, there's this division where the main solution is actually the MAUI solution. So let's go ahead and go into the MAUI solution right now. Uh, so here we go. And so this is essentially where we've kind of left off on things. And let's see what we have in our uploads folder right now. So essentially, I said that we're going to be handling this in 2 stages. One is that we have a front end that talks to the Maui backend, and the other is that we have the actual Maui application. So the front end is in Blazor. So let me, now that we're in Visual Studio, I can show you that we want to run both the front end and the Maui client as well. So let me go ahead and run both the browser front end and the Maui client. And I hope that, well, it looks like my emulator is already launched, which is great. And I should be able to launch both of these projects. And it's going to be trying to restore my project. And well, let's go ahead and see what I can, why it's not super happy with that. Well, it's fine. I have another version of this. I don't really want to tackle trying to restore this particular project, let's just deal with the version that I have on the version of Maui that I have. So let's go to navigate here. So I have this solution. I think this was the one I was working with. And so, yeah, here we go. All right. So I already have some files open in this particular project. So I mentioned there's a front end. The front end itself is in Blazor, and we've talked about it previously. I've made some changes, some additions to that, and additionally, we have the MAUI client as well in this project. So let me go ahead and let's start up both when we run. So we're going to go ahead and have the web service running, which is going to be in Blazor with the controller endpoint for the upload control and the controller endpoint to list all the contents in our upload directory. So our uploads directory is, and it just started. Our uploads directory is right here. So these are the files that we have. We already have quite a few. I've uploaded as many files as I could to test. So I've tested files that are something like a megabyte big and some files which are 20 megabytes. So PDF files of different varying sizes. And this is the collection view of basically what you see in the file explorer here. So you see all the PDFs, and some of them are pending for signature and some of them are not. And then in the Blazor client, if I refresh here, I get this grid view of basically the same sort of statuses where I'm coding the signed PDFs as being basically the green rows. And so you can also see that these correspond to basically what's in my upload directory, because my upload directory has these file sizes and they match up to what Blazor says the file sizes are. So this is basically the functionality. And kind of I wanted to start off with where we kind of, yeah, I wanted to start off with where we um, began things. And where we began things was essentially the way you could view or preview a particular document was this style. So if I click here on the assigned document, this is my beautiful signature I put on a quote. I'm not going to zoom in too far on the quote, but essentially the idea is that there is a read-only view of this PDF, and I can look at that. And for just for my own sanity, I should probably not have that particular version of that quote because that may be a sensitive document. So let me go ahead and refresh some of these documents. So I don't really need all of these particular documents right now, here and now. So let me go ahead and delete them from my uploads folder. And generally speaking, you're not going to want to do that. I'm doing that just because I have access to the file server or the web server where the file path is. If I refresh this in Blazor, you'll notice that actually we'll get a new, well, if I refresh it as well here, may need to actually go ahead and make sure that the cache that we have running corresponds to what was copied from the file system. But we'll get a more manageable set of files, and we can talk about kind of what process we have for actually going ahead and making changes. So here again, let's refresh, and we have basically the three files that are remaining, the three PDF files that are remaining. All three of them are pending. I don't really want to talk about pending behavior right now because pending is basically pending a signature. What I wanted to talk about is let's take a file and upload it here. So I found just some random, I guess, file called, well, I named it Stalker, but it's about stocks. So I'll go ahead and drag and drop it here. And never mind this.
Stalker.
This is a, yeah, I just decided to name it that. I thought it'd be funny, but I uploaded this file. This was the upload control working in Blazor. That's how we'll get basically a new row here. So I'll refresh and you'll see that we'll have not three rows, but four. So we'll have this extra file called Stalker. And if I refresh in my Maui client, I also get this file, call it Stalker, but I can sign this particular file. And another thing I've done, I should also mention, is that I've enabled the ability for us to have more than one page. We'll talk about that if we get to it. But if I click next, it will render the next page, for example. So this is page 2 of someone talking about, you know, different securities instruments and stocks, and I thought it was interesting. If I go back to my list, um, the actual starting point for what we get back is uh, is actually if we sign a document, that's what we see in the demo we were beginning with. So remember from last time, I don't know if you do, I don't know if anyone does, but I think we were dealing with this multi-page document. It's about F sharp. So I just decided to use as our sample document. Let me see if I can zoom this in even more. All right, good. Uh, I'll want to sign not necessarily the first page, but the second page because it's more of a challenge to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and sign it with our Herbie Hancock. So Herbie, one of the great founders of this nation, Herbie Hancock. And let's go ahead and sign it. And this is one little issue with this app as it stands right now. We can kind of improve things. Um, the load times, because I know when the load times are, I kind of expect there to be kind of some stuttering in between the operations when you save and make a change. But when I went ahead and did this, actually, uh, there is a little bit of load time because it's re-rendering the entire page. So now I get this version of the document. And just to reiterate that it's actually on the file server. If I refresh here, there is the signed version here now. And if I download the file, I think the way I've implemented this is that I download the latest signed copy of this file. So I get this letter, and on the second page is my beautiful Herbie Hancock signature. So actually, I can retrieve signed versions of documents, and I think that's pretty darn cool. The other thing is that the whole point, or not the whole point, but one of the nice things here is I wanted to showcase kind of where we were coming at this from. That is, by default, the demo doesn't have the view that you're looking at with our image editor. You actually have the ability to see a read-only version of the document. And this is this last row here. I'd refresh, and now I get this last row. Uh, and now if I look at this version, this is actually the pinch and pan container that we were earlier dealing with, or we were earlier looking at inside of Visual Studio. So now I can look at this PDF, and I get the second page that's signed, and I get whatever page I go to, and I get each page in a pinch and pan container. What's maybe notable is that what's maybe notable. Oh, now I'm gonna. We may be having some audio issues, so I'm just gonna.
Just a little bit.
Okay, great. Just a little bit is the right amount. So my point here is that this pinch and pan container is actually kind of a, I wouldn't say it's a poor man's PDF control, but it is kind of in the sense that I haven't implemented what you know and love with PDF viewers usually, things like bookmark support and page thumbnails and the ability to search text. I could technically do that in our document processor on the back end. But actually, in this particular case, this is my own bespoke PDF viewer that I kind of built out. By default, actually, we don't have a PDF viewer that you can use the ready-made control. But this is kind of the uh, the uh, the stand-in version for kind of what that would look like. So that was kind of cool that we have multi-page support now in this particular example. And
Yeah.
we'll kind of go over kind of what this all means and how it was implemented, because there was quite a lot between the starting point and the end point we're at right now. So
Hey, Arg.
yes,
Sorry. We
yeah,
did have a question that came in a little bit ago. But I kind of let you sort of
no,
wrap
no,
that
go
little bit
ahead.
up, but it's a bit off topic. but
No,
that's
okay.
okay.
All right.
From YouTube, hello, what should we pay attention to when learning any UI framework, regardless of the subject? Will it be enough to just read the documentation and write code? Do you have any
Well,
input on that?
I think reading documentation and writing code is all that we ever really do. So that's kind of, is it all of the above? Yes, I think it is all of the above. But I would say that when you're learning a new UI framework, I guess the first thing is what sort of platform are we talking about? If we're talking about, web or uh, desktop technology or mobile technology. So that kind of has a big bearing on what the direction is of our focus. The other thing I would say is that running with small, workable pieces of code and trying to figure out what's going on is a good way of getting started. So, for example, in Maui, I think kind of the umbrella in which all this falls under, if you're curious to learn Maui or you want to look further into this, is that this falls under the umbrella of XAML technologies. So specifically, if I stop debugging this project and I go into kind of the structure of what I have, you'll notice that after our Maui program basically runs, what we're doing is we're running an app shell, and that app shell is going to be basically routing us to different view pages. And those view pages are essentially basically requiring you to kind of pick up one new technology or a facility in a new technology. So you need that technology to be, or your facility to be in XAML in specific. So if I go into, I had this in a different, have this full screen because I usually require a full screen view of this. So I like to have a side-by-side view of my views and my logic for my views. That's why I have this set up. But the idea is that this view is actually what's being displayed when we're talking about signing a particular PDF. Um, so my point being is that this view is kind of what starts you off on the path to requiring a view model. So a view model is kind of going to determine everything else in your application. So the view and the view model are kind of the main actors in an MVVM sort of application, and it's kind of juxtaposed with Blazor, for example, where you can kind of pick and choose if you want to do MVC or if you want to do more component based. Uh, kind of you have your choices made for you in these animal technologies that you kind of have to use NVVM with a few exceptions. The exceptions being, if you'd like, you could go fully code behind, and some of what I have in this project is somewhat code behind because I don't really like relying on things like services or relying on parameter passing between view models and models. So, for example, I like instantiating my view models manually so I know exactly what I'm doing. That's just my preference. So, you can go more code behind heavy. The other approach, and it's kind of not really done so much in live applications, but it's a possibility, is that there's another project called Comet, and I believe it's called Model View Update. Yeah, it's a Model View Update toolkit. I haven't played around with this, but this is basically the alternative to MVVM in the Maui space. So for the most part, for 90% of people, this is not the pattern you're going to be using. You're just going to be using MVVM, and there is a Maui toolkit for that. So there's the Maui toolkit MVVM. If I search for that, this is actually the main way of going about building Maui applications with MVVM. So in that case, you're going to be having to deal with, unfortunately, with things like attached behaviors, which are kind of, unfortunately, hate to say it, but MVVM used to be more painful in the past, but it still is a bit of a slog. Specifically, if I go to my sign page, I can show you what I mean. So if I go to my drawing view, I have here the attached behavior that we created. It's from the example too, so you can look at it in the example code. But it's this MVVM behavior, and I'm actually binding to the commands here um, in my behavior. And I think that's a little bit, I don't know, I think it's a little bit heavy because if you notice that Visual Studio kind of has some trouble understanding how relative source bindings work, it resolves this at compile time, but at, sorry, it resolves this at runtime, but at compile time, it sometimes gets confused about whether or not this is actually available on my attached behavior. It is, and it's available on my drawing view, but it's looking for it right now in my view model, which is why I'm getting this blue squiggly. So my point is that the name of the game here is MVVM, and that's kind of the determiner of what's going on in my MAUI project. Uh, Actually, I think it's a little bit complicated to dive right into what I wrote in Maui. I think it's probably a little bit easier if we start off with running one project, which is the Blazor piece, just to remind people what we have. So, kind of, I think the starting point of what we're doing is we're uploading files and we're converting files into file tags that are aware, or Blazor is aware of these file tag objects, and they're described by these properties. And this is not available in our example. This is my own creation. I built it based on what I needed out of the file. I needed to know these particular properties out of the file. And I needed this sign status. If I was going to write a MAUI application that was going to be doing signing, I needed some idea of different types of steps of the signing process. So this is what I call pending or requested. And then these are kind of self-explanatory that once a document is signed, it's signed. And if it's declined, this file tag is actually something that both the Maui piece and the Blazor piece are aware of. Mainly the Blazor piece uses this, but that's because essentially I have a web API endpoint basically where I'm doing the heavy lifting, which is the upload file. And this upload file is basically something that can be understood uh, in the index page that I have for Blazor, and it's also understood by um, the Maui um, client. And we'll talk about what the Maui client is doing the talk to upload file. But we'll start off, I think, with talking about what the index page here is doing in Blazor with the upload controller point. So essentially, the thing is that the person or the control that is aware firstly of what the route is to get to this upload file is our upload control. And what it's doing is that it's actually implemented to chunk the file in 2 megabyte um, intervals. And actually, I think this is 2 kilobytes. Yeah, this is chunk size in bytes. But anyway, my point is that it's chunking and it's sending to this particular uh, path. And this path corresponds to this URL endpoint, sorry, this controller endpoint. So basically, we're handling the process of generating the correct chunk metadata for your chunk size. And actually, our controller or our upload control is not aware of this particular parameter. I'm defaulting it to 0, but I am using it elsewhere. So I'm using it in model binding in Maui, and we'll get to what the model binding looks like in Maui. But if I go ahead and actually run this, and this is my default startup project, and just to remind me what my startup projects are, I have this, and it's my default here. Let's see what we get. So it's going to pick up things in my upload directory. I don't know what we have in my upload directory. We have these things in my upload directory. And if I were to upload one more file, so let's say if I really use the drag and drop, let's upload this maybe, let's upload a fairly large file. So I know that this is a large file. This is 18 megabytes. So it's starting, and when it starts, uh, I get some chunk metadata. The chunk metadata, if you're curious what it looks like, the chunking is chunking looks like this. So you'll notice that this is the first chunk, index 0, and if I continue, you'll notice that as I'm continuing, the progress is going to go up and up. But let's go past a few. So I think we're on the third chunk or so. And if I now get the chunk metadata, you'll see that this is actually the fourth chunk, but you'll notice that my chunk metadata now is reflecting index 3. So now I'm on the fourth chunk. And if I keep going, and it's chunked even more, and this is my new chunk metadata, you'll see that our upload control has communicated this. And let me just keep running. And as I'm running, it's uploading this large file slowly. It's 18 megabytes. So it's fairly large compared to these other files. You'll notice that the other files are like 1.8 megabytes and 5 megabytes. But yeah, so this is 18 megabytes. And once this is done uploading, I can refresh it and it will show up in this view here. And I think I've already showcased how I'm um, checking my directory path in my uploads control. But yeah, so I get this 18 meg file, so a fairly large file. Um, and if I'd like, I can, at this point, download that particular file from, the application. So I get, this is not the version of
What
this
is
large
this?
file from my desktop. It's the version from my uploads folder.
Rust
So
in action?
yeah, of course, I'm always hungry to learn a new programming language. Already, it's not enough to get beaten down in maybe C sharp or F sharp. We have to, expand our horizons past F sharp to, greener pastures. So that's
Yeah.
why, why not give Rust a go? Anyway, so let me clear out this uploads folder because it's already piling up with a lot of files and maybe we don't necessarily care so much about. So I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these files we added in the signed file. We don't, maybe I'll leave the signed file so we'll have an example of a signed file. But the point being here is that our upload control handled chunking for you. We didn't have to implement any idea of chunking. So again, this is the Razor syntax of the same page we're looking at, the index page. And there's not really too much that really is special about this because most of the heavy lifting, like I said, has been taken care of by our own upload control. The one thing I was doing is that I was just using my list controller endpoint to list my files and to get the latest. So that's all I'm doing in terms of really interesting logic. But I'm going to go ahead and run both projects. So I have an actual web service to hit because without the web service, my MAUI application has no list of items to get. But I want to explain a bit about what my MAUI application is actually doing. So we talked about kind of what's going on when I'm using the upload control to upload documents. So the upload control is here. And then we talked about kind of what my list endpoint is doing as well. My list endpoint is actually giving me the list of different file tags. And all of that is in this controller endpoint. So I needed to basically have let's get, yeah, this, let me go ahead and just navigate to the list endpoint. So it's list. Yes, there we go. That's the route. So this list endpoint basically is using the file URL storage service I already implemented to get a list of all my files. And what this is that it's just a glorified dictionary that I've added a few different methods on to basically list all of the files for my endpoint for my keys. So my endpoint basically requests um, my set of files, and I'm getting my keys from my endpoint. Uh, Now, inside of my MAUI application, the way I'm handling this is that I have one um, view model that's doing the majority of my work, and it's my navigation view model. It's actually what's attached to my collection view. So maybe if I run this in debug mode, it will make even more sense. But before that, I want to hit some breakpoints. So let me dive a little bit deeper into this particular view model. So this view model is bound to my collection view, and basically what it's doing is that I'm calling this particular document fetch documents to, as you would guess, fetch my documents. And the one recommendation I'm following here is I'm trying to basically limit my HTTP calls to my server to one HTTP client. And the way you do this, if you really were gonna implement this with services in Maui, which is the typical way you do it, is you have a separate HTTP service in Maui that you call. In Blazor, we do this with an HTTP factory. So, so just to remind you what that is, it's basically this thing here. So whenever I want to use the HTTP client, I reference this name in Blazor. In Maui, it's a little bit different. You're not supposed to use HTTP client factory. You're just supposed to use an HTTP client. You're not supposed to dispose it. You're supposed to use it for the duration of your calls to that server. So my point being is that what I do in this particular app is I assign uh, this navigation view model to my Maui program, and I use it in my other view models as well. So I don't create a second HTTP client. This is the only HTTP client, and it's only associated with this view model, and other detail view models can actually have some reference to this because they can go reach it through the Maui program that I have set up here. But anyway, my point is that I'm actually calling this fetch documents async, and this is actually what's pulling my list of documents. And then the other piece that I'm doing is I need to be able to communicate the other way. And the other way is the upload piece, and that's in the other view model. And we'll get to that. But let's first talk about the collection view and it pulling a read-only view of the list of documents. So we're running this, and it's going to be running two projects. So the other project is not the Maui client; it's actually the front end that you can view the web service in, and that's all in Blazor. So again, this the Blazor piece is running. The Blazor piece is kind of what's going to get fetched, and here, if I step through this code, uh, basically what I'm doing is I'm calling my 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 web service, and this base address, by the way, is platform dependent. This is somewhat important as well to mention that I have a ternary expression here. If you're on Android or if you're using Android, it's going to your emulator is going to use this as your base address. Otherwise, it's going to use this in iOS. And what's notable to mention is that there's a few tweaks you're going to have to make to actually communicate to a HTTP web service locally. Specifically, if you go to platforms, iOS and Android, you'll see kind of what the distinction is. So in my main activity, actually, it's under main application. This is kind of this will get adapted to the main starting point in Android. So this will get converted into, I think, Java. But basically, this attribute is something I actually added to my application attribute. So I added a parameter to my application attribute, use clear text traffic. That's how I'm doing this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to communicate through this boundary. Um, so, and I should also mention, in case you're not aware, the this URL is something that's assigned by the software internal router that the Android emulator uses. So it basically assigns what I think of as local host on this development box as 10.0.2.2. And I've paused this for so long that it's actually um, telling me the hot reload is going to have problems, but it's fine. So I'll continue, and it will actually stop with the breakpoint and let me here. Here we go. There we go. It's our collection. It's updated. And basically, we pulled the list of all the same documents, and you could see them in Blazor side by side. So if I refresh, I may have I may have basically um, stepped through this application in a way that basically caused it to think that we're at an error. The reasons that I halted the progress midway. I typically wouldn't be doing that. I think it was inside of a using block as well. So I think that maybe had disposed of some resources. But if I hit this breakpoint again, I think that breakpoint is still there in my view model. Yes, let's just not halt on that breakpoint this time. And now we get the list. And I'm not sure what the default browser is on this machine, but let me go ahead and open. Yes, on the other window, I have this, and if I refresh this time, it should go ahead and know, well, the same set of files, just displayed a little bit differently in this grid. So I decided to color code anything that's signed as being green. Um, Now, what I also want to go ahead and do is that when I look at a document, I want to be able to actually um, sign it. So let's go through the whole signing process, start to the very end of what the signing process is. So firstly, we need some sort of PDF to work with. So luckily, we actually do have a great demos page. If you go to demos.devexpress.com, uh, you can actually navigate here. And we have something called reporting libraries. And our reporting libraries are right here, and they allow you to generate data-bound PDF files. So I can maybe go and look at something like a I don't know, this fancy looking um, PDF. I'd like something that's hopefully more than one page because it would be kind of cool to showcase that I can sign more than one page. So maybe I'll go and find, you know, this. I already have fall catalog there. I don't know if signing a restaurant menu makes sense, but it might be funny.
Ooh,
So yeah, we have 4 pages here. It's maybe not such a bad idea. So
like a
I'll
celebrity
sign.
signature.
Yeah, I'll sign this with a signature, and why not? Like a celebrity chef would, I guess. And I'll open this particular file, restaurant menu. And like I said, there's kind of 2 ways to go about uploading this. I can either drag and drop, or I can select this from the dialog in this application. I'll do a drag and drop. I haven't done that in a while. So I did the drag and drop of this 4 page PDF. It's uploaded to my app. Just to verify that it's really uploaded, there's 2 ways I can verify that it's uploaded. One is that it's actually visible at this www uploads folder, and I should have restaurant menu here, and it is. Uh, the other point is that if I go here and I refresh, it should also appear in this view, and it does. It's a 91 kilobyte restaurant menu, and it looks like that matches up with, well, rounded up, it's 92 kilobytes on File Explorer. According to File Explorer, it's 92, but this is indeed the same file, and I generated a GUID for it, and I have the file name for it and all that. So it all makes sense, and it's the right file generation date as well. Now, the point is we want to go over the whole signing process. Now when I refresh, it's going to hit, I think, my breakpoint again, because it's going to refresh the whole list in my collection view. So here, hit my breakpoint. And this, like I said, is just calling the list endpoint for my breakpoint. And here I have this additional restaurant menu PDF, which is pending signature. And what I want to go ahead and do is I want to actually showcase kind of what the sign procedure is going to be like. The sign procedure is going to load a view called sign page. I think we've already gone over kind of some of what's there. Um, but specifically, there's going to be um, a process by which uh, we have something called a tap command in my collection view. And if I go into my navigation and I go into this tap command with this handy search that I have, which I'm a big fan of, if I go into my tap, so it's DS collection view tap, I'll see the handler for this, navigate here to it. And what the tap is doing is that based on what I'm tapping on, I'm going to be handling the shell navigation, which is how I'm navigating this MAUI app to one of these two view models. So if it's as you could guess, depending or not, uh, if the sign status is requested or if it already is signed, I'm going to route to either one of the views, being the sign page or the view page view. And I'm passing in a few other parameters. This is the is signable parameter, which is kind of useful. I probably should have set this one the true and this one the false, but I'll correct that, I suppose. It looks like I don't really. I correct that later on in the initialization of this sign page. Um, but I'm also passing in a parameter, and that parameter is the file name that exists that I can kind of refer to. So this is the file name not in Blazor. This is the file name in MAUI. So I can find this file when I made changes to it in my assets. And specifically, uh, to get shell-based navigation to work, what's notable is that, and this is the new way of doing things. This is the old way is using this activator pattern. But if I use the shell-based navigation, I have to actually register my views and the code behind for my app shell. So I've already done that. So these are all registered and they need to be to actually navigate using the app shell. So if I showcase what I'm doing in each of these, so in the sign page, which is what we're going to be navigating to soon enough, I'm actually basically not passing in things through the constructor. What I'm doing is I'm um, using the fact that the app shell is going to be setting the parameter values correctly, and I'm using that to pass in everything else I need to make the view model aware of, things like the different controls. And I don't think this is a violation of MVVM. Technically, this is not, I guess, the cleanest possible MVVM, but to be honest, I think we love shooting ourselves in the foot with excessive MVVM. I think beyond what you need, you should really not take MVVM super seriously. I mean, what I mean by not what you need or don't take it super aggressive is that the real the real point is not to have a heavy code behind, and we don't have a heavy code behind at all. I think we just have some initialization logic. We're passing parameters to our view model. So I think that doesn't count really. And the view model that we're using is the PDF view model. And this is kind of where I kind of want to showcase that we're going to be calling this update preview at different points in time. And that's where I want to hit my or have a breakpoint so I can show you what we're doing. And so this update preview is actually somewhat taken from the example as well. So if you go to the example we started off with at the beginning of this talk, we talk about what we're doing. And what we're doing is we're basically building a poor man's PDF control. And the PDF control, really, as we understand it, is in a pinch and pan container, we have a 120, 1,200 pixel bitmap preview of basically a page that we're looking at, which is the current page. That was my sort of addition here, is that I've added not just like a default single page, but I have a page number. So if I go here to my page number property, I have different pieces of logic that require kind of, I can increment the page number, decrement the page number, and I can display the current page number. So that's by default, this is going to be the first page, um, but it's going to potentially be modified as a navigating. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So right now, after I click this, the tab command should give me um, the ability to see this in the sign page, and the sign page corresponds to the PDF view model. I'm not going to step through that piece of logic. I'm just going to hit the breakpoint. So it looks like it's not going to hit my breakpoint because I think that I need to refresh. Yeah, sure. Let's enable it. Actually, let me finish this run and then. So I click this, and actually I did hit my breakpoint, which is always great to see. Uh, and I'm gonna continue so I can actually get the preview. And here we go. There's a little bit of a delay as it loads the whole document and it renders the first page. And I said page count right now, or the page number right now is 1. Let's make this page 2. And again, it's going to render again. That's what hit the breakpoint. And now it's page 2 of our menu. And maybe on page 3, that's when I want to go ahead and sign. So I'm going to sign on page 3 this time. Because I've been signing on page 2 lately, and I just want to verify that, hey, I can do more than that. And I'm going to go ahead and sign here at the bottom of the first column, and I'm going to, you know, have some silly symbol or set of symbols for my signature. I must sign that PDF, and it's going to handle that. It's going to update the preview, but it does something else as well that I should mention, in that I actually want to hit the sign button. So what I want to go ahead and do is I want to call this method. I've actually already called it right now. And I want to go over this solution because it's actually not just calling my my controller, it's calling it in chunked mode. So I think I'll have to run this one more time to show you exactly what's happening. But basically what happened on this call is I called this particular method, and I really did this time rely on someone who came up with an ingenious solution, and I want to showcase what it was. Um, Sometimes actually there are great pieces of logic on Stack Overflow, and I actually relied on this person's great solution for how to handle passing in, if you remember correctly, or if you remember, this metadata, how this was attached to the multi-form data content as a binary array content. So we're adding uh, more content to the request, and basically each request has an idea of this image upload is kind of what is already there in our controller. So if I go to my file controller, you'll notice there is a image upload, but there's also this chunk metadata. So the chunk metadata and the sign status is something I want to include. So sign status, it's kind of simple. It's just a simple enum, and I added it to this form. But the chunking was what was complicated in this case, and so I actually would not have been able to figure this out if I didn't like stumble across someone else who had done this, because by default our upload control was taking care of the chunking, and it's kind of a more involved process to handle this via chunking if you're going to do it that way. But I'll showcase that we are actually using chunking in Maui. So the request is being sent and it's being chunked. So I'll go ahead and go back into my file controller, and my file controller was here, and I will basically showcase that we're talking about one chunk at a time. For now, though, let's see what the current state is of the set of applications or the set of documents in my uploads folder. So specifically, if I go here back to my Blazor front end, there should now be a second green line when I refresh, and that second green line should basically be the signed version of the restaurant menu. I could even download this file because I think I download by default the latest signed document. So I on the third page there should be some sort of signature, and there is on the third page some sort of signature. If you call it that. Um, but what I want to go ahead and do is I want to really showcase that the real difficulty here was getting chunked uploading to work properly, and that required in Maui implementing this logic. This logic is kind of adapted to my project, but really this would not have been possible had I not stumbled on someone else's solution, because it was a really great solution to basically stream um, chunk by chunk the amount, and in each web request add the form content I will need. So we'll talk about that right now. So we'll sign another document. So let's go back into my Android emulator. Let's go back. And this example is not really designed to handle, I guess, multiple signatures. So it may it may give me some problems in the drawing view, and I don't really want to have this breakpoint on the update preview anymore. I just will update the preview. And I thought to upload the Apple II reference manual at some point. It's a recent document from 1978. And I'll sign the
My
cover
birth
page for the
year.
first time. I'll sign it Steve. Let's let that be up in
Oh,
the air
wow.
for we're saying Steve Wozniak or Steve Jobs, but one of the Steves. Again, I'm an aspirational Steve for this. But so now this update server async call is being made, and this is what's actually handling the upload. I clicked sign PDF, so I want that signature to be transmitted to the Blazor application, which is on the network. And what this is doing, I don't really care beyond this call what's happening. I want to actually showcase what's happening on the controller. The controller should get hit, and the controller gets hit. What's important is this chunk metadata. And if I'm actually chunking and not streaming, uh, and this, let's maybe have this cordoned off. So the chunk metadata from this was from our upload control. So from DX upload, our chunking looks like that. And this is from MAUI, my chunking looks like this. So I get chunk number one, which is index zero, and I'll hit the breakpoint again for chunk number two, and it's index one for chunk number two, and then chunk number three. And as you can guess, we just get more and more chunks until we finish this. So I'm not going to hit this breakpoint anymore, just continue. And so actually behind the scenes, it took this document and it uploaded it. And I think I could refresh this in two ways. One is I can see in the Maui client my list of things that I've signed. It should be there. I just need to refresh. So I'll ping the server and get the latest copy. So now I should get a copy of the red book, which is signed. So it won't be pending for signature if all goes well. And it picked up two signed copies. I signed a restaurant menu in the meantime. That's showing up, and it's showing up my red book, which is signed, and I could view it in my view page, which is not a special page. It's just a, like I said, the poor man's PDF viewer. So I can again read this PDF if I want in my pinch and pan container, and I could go and look at previous pages. I could go back. Um, And what I can also do is in Blazor, I also get this particular red book, which is signed. And again, it was done with chunking. And I'll explain what really the significance is of that after I download this file and verify, hey, it's downloaded. So I have my beautiful Steve signature in the front, and I have the rest of my document. My point in chunking was I was looking to avoid streaming the entire file. And the reason I wanted to avoid that is that PDF files may be even bigger than 18 megabytes, and we don't want the entire stream to be loaded in memory. We want the chunk size to be as small as possible and the stream to load that in the buffer for each chunk essentially. So that was the idea. That's why I wanted to do chunking, because it's a more complicated version of upload. And it's a more complicated but resource efficient approach to handling the process of loading what's necessary into buffers. So we're not relying on streams to do this. So I think that's pretty cool. Um, Really, what remains at this point, the only real things I'm kind of not satisfied with this version of the app as it stands, is that really for this to be useful, we'd probably want to tie this to some idea of user accounts. Because if you notice, there is in this example, since we started off with the example kind of giving us the lay of the land, we have a PFX command, or PFX certificate that's given to us by default. Really, we'd probably like to have one created based on our details, because the demo uses some ridiculous values. It uses someone's name. I'm not Jane Cooper, and I don't think a valid password should be 123, because that's the default certificate password we use. Um, so we can improve all these things once we have user logins and user roles, and they will actually be a functional PDF signing application. And those user roles will be something that both the MAUI application and also the Blazor front end will respect. So those are basically two different places that we're supposed to have this understanding of user logins. But so far, this is the really hard part. Getting the chunk uploading to work is actually fairly difficult. To be honest, I had to do this in very many tries to get it functioning. I don't think that you would be able to on the spot think of how to get this to work. Uh, but I think the streaming approach is simple enough that you could probably do streaming without too much thought. In fact, in my index page, for the download, I am handling the download using streamref object. So if I go to I think it's called .NET reference, uh, lots of things start with ref. So let me just go down here to download file. In download file, I believe I mentioned here that there is, yeah, .NET stream reference. This is basically using the same sort of approach that um, file open read would use, or an approach that generates a memory stream would use. So this is the download is not happening with something like the same sort of facility that chunking works in. But in any case, you're going to be loading the file in memory when you open it. So I don't think it really matters. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the approach. And so I think this is kind of a big sort of piece of functionality to kind of digest. And like I said, kind of the next stage in this is to inject some idea of user roles and some idea of there being user accounts attached to certificates. But yeah, that's actually all she wrote, Amanda. That's quite a
All she
lot, to
wrote
be
and
honest.
signed.
Yeah. So everything is signed at this point. I mean, like this is, I think it's beautiful. I mean, we got, I think on page two, we have our Herbie Hancock on our beautiful
Mhm.
PDF. And we have basically a, if you're willing to actually go into this project, you have a PDF viewer for free. You don't get a PDF viewer in Maui, but you get one in my project. So that, I think that's pretty cool. And it's because of our Office File API. So I should give full credit. Office File API enabled this. The PDF document processor previews the image and gives us the ability to, again, the the piece that this happens in is this update preview logic. So I actually, every page gets rendered based on what page number we're at. So I think that's pretty cool.
Okay, okay. It is cool. Thank you. All right, everybody. That is it for this one. You can join us tomorrow. You can hear more of Arig's voice tomorrow. He will be joining Gregory. Gregory is going to be doing a getting started on DevExpress View tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you can join us again. And that is it for this one. We will see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Bye.